to the long and the short of it, episode 7. Oh my goodness gracious. I cannot believe we have done 7 episodes. That means that we started this project 8 weeks ago, because I don't know if you remember, we skipped a week. And we had gone through the entire Dalmore catalog, which was so exciting. So tonight we are restarting our last 3 episodes of the series with a different single malt. So a little bit different and exciting for the week. Now, I know you probably saw in the media that I put out that, you know, it's been such a boring week. It's one of those weeks in America where just nothing is happening. And I don't know about you, but I've been kind of like tearing my hair out trying to find something to do. I mean, all the shows are off. It's like, you know, the weather's getting cooler and just nothing is happening. So, you know, I think we should probably check in with my incredible and funny and cool co-host, and dare I say, my good friend, Beth Hickey up in Seattle, because it's much colder than it is here in LA. Beth, how are you doing?
It is actually quite chilly and very rainy today. So I opted for the cozy sweater as we're dealing with a slightly peated Scotch, and you know, I'm going to finish up the cheese board later on. So
you said earlier before we got on, you said your head isn't a cheese board, which I feel kind of illustrates the general mood of everyone in America. Our head isn't a cheese board. So
I needed to have a happy place.
Yes.
So I forget to breathe and be like, oh, geez, okay.
Well, you know, doing this show every week, you know, you see it in our credits. Our incredible logo that is to this side of me was created by a talented artist, Jason Freeman Robinson, or Freeman the artist. And every time I see it, it cheers me up because it's like such a cute little, you know, happy thing with sort of a tiki vibe, you know. So it's like it's always a good thing to be on the show. But tonight, we are representing again, with this whole like crazy week in the country, we are representing a huge swath of the country because most of our guests, since we started, have been on the West Coast. Beth, you're in Seattle, I'm in LA, so it's usually these West Coast folks. But a lot of people don't realize, who don't know me prior to this, I had this crazy East Coast past. I'm actually from Georgia, and I spent 15 years in New York City, where I built the beginning of my spirits career. So tonight we have one of my old friends who I have not gotten to see in person in a really long time joining us. So I'm going to go ahead and welcome our third guest tonight, our secret third. And I'm going to give him a bit of an introduction. So Lincoln Chinnery. Lincoln is a freelance cocktail journalist and intellectual badass. That's right. Fluent in comic books and sci-fi, which I also love. And I think, Beth, you got a little sci-fi in you. He's written for Edge Publications, AM New York, Metro Mix, and Voda. And Lincoln, this is like your Playboy profile. Lincoln enjoys all the major spirits, walks in the park, rainy nights. Bourbon, whiskey, rye is never too far from his next drink. You're going to fit in perfectly here on the show. And I also want to shout out what's not in the bio that I'm clearly reading is that you've also written for the Alcohol Professor, which is a wonderful publication and people I love very much, also on the East Coast. And then you are currently about to feature an article in American Whiskey Magazine, which is upcoming.
Yes, well, I'm actually not featured, sorry. I'm a current columnist for American Whiskey Magazine. So I'll be doing a monthly column. Yeah, that's the word I use.
I love that. They've been doing, I mean, ever since they came out, I've been kind of following them since the first edition. Like, they've really been presenting a very different whiskey world than what is in some of the older magazines or some of the more classic magazines.
Right.
And it's really thrilling to see that change and the different faces that are being represented in the industry. So that's a cool column to have. And when were you first featured? Were you in the first edition, or like did you join up later?
No, I did a piece, I'm going to say last year. I wrote about corking and corks in general. And that was a test piece just to see, like, you know, can I write for this just major whiskey magazine? And it went well. They had me come back to write about bourbon bars in Brooklyn, and I wrote about the Travel Bar in Brooklyn. So it's you know, it's nice to be at a place where you can educate and enlighten, but not talk down to people. You know, like you can have an opinion about the spirit, you can have an opinion about the industry. And even if the person you're talking to doesn't agree with you, you can still have a good conversation and present that to the readers.
I love that. I mean, we were just talking, and Beth, you always say this so eloquently, but like about anything that we do on a daily basis. I do single malt, Beth's wine. You're talking about these lovely, elegant spirits. We could all be snobs, but you know, Beth, you have just such a beautiful perspective on making this accessible for people.
Like people that have known me for a while will know that I will say it's just like for wine, it's fermented grape juice. So you can't take it too seriously. You can be very serious about it and very dedicated to its making, its enjoyment, its study. And that's beautiful, but don't take yourself seriously and don't take what you do so, you have to have some joy. You have to have like the bigger picture, just to keep everything in perspective. That's really important.
I could not agree more with that. And I actually have a question because, like, when we talk about sci-fi and fantasy and comics and all this, there are those like Star Wars people, and then there are those Star Trek people. And like, I've always been like kind of like a sci-fi dabbler. It's like, I really enjoy it, and I'm not going to fight somebody over it. I was really excited to see Donald, I'm going to say Glover. That's not correct. Donald, oh my God. I can't think of his name. Play Lando Calrissian. I'm not like a purist, so I was like so excited to see him in the role. All I can think of, Childish Gambino. I can't think of his real name.
Glover.
I think it is Glover, right? Because I'm like, yeah, okay.
Go with your instincts. Follow
with
the
my
force.
instincts. You were right. I was probably right the first time, right?
Yes, it was the force. Mm-hmm.
I've been noticing, and not that this is a new genre, Lincoln. I mean, this has been around for a long time, but there's a lot of comic books and sci-fi works that are extraordinarily self-referential and are oftentimes commenting on the genre, just like that's happened in horror as well. Mm-hmm. And I was just curious, are you picking up any of this stuff? Are you watching like The Boys that's been so successful, or any of that stuff that's coming out?
I've watched The Boys.
Mm-hmm.
Truly enjoyed it. The Boys it's for comic fans who are at a point where it's like, yeah, we get it. They're all wonderful and almost perfect. It's a nice warped mirror on comic books and writing and character development. So do I like The Boys? Love watching it. Have I read a lot of the criticisms about it, and especially the end of season 2? Yes. Do I agree with it? I'm going to say no, because you know what? If you watch it and you enjoy it, then watch it and enjoy it. I'm not gonna dissect someone's joy just because it'll get me an extra 5 cents or extra 3 clicks. That's not how I roll.
Yeah, here at the long and the short of it, we do not care about viewership, apparently. No, I hear you. And I think the biggest criticism I've read, I don't know, Beth, I don't know if you've seen The Boys. I
haven't. I've heard about it. I just haven't had time to watch anything.
I hear you. It's basically the biggest criticism I've read is hyperviolence, but I would argue that the show uses hyperviolence in the same way that like I'm doing it again. It's that old woman brain freeze.
What's the first show on your mind?
Well, it's Bastards. It's the Quentin Tarantino movie.
Kill Bill?
You might pick any of them.
No, but it's something Bastards. What is it? I can't think
of it. Inglourious Bastards.
Inglourious Bastards. Thank you. And like, because that uses hyperviolence in a very specific and obviously not realistic way. And I don't think that hyperviolence is something that everybody wants to watch, but I do think that when somebody makes the choice to engage in it, it's like it can be a very useful tool. So that's my hot take on The Boys. I was also curious, and have any of you, the panel, have you guys seen Watchmen? And what did you think of the new kind of reimagining of that?
Well, Beth, ladies first, please.
Oh, I was going to say, once again, I was studying for a wine exam and I have 3 kids. I'm like, I'm really behind on TV shows. I'm like, well, I'll just be over here enjoying my pairing.
So okay, I got one for you, Beth. So how is the social experiment of watching 5th grade math being taught over a computer? Like, how's that going?
Hold on.
And that's why we drink.
You need to talk about The Watchmen, but wow. I have the utmost respect for the school and the teachers. They were never trained to be in this position, and to pivot so quickly is so impressive.
God bless them.
With such compassion and empathy. I am eternally grateful. That being said, because I work when the kids are in school, my work comes first, just for the nature of, existence. And I can't be on them to be on all the Zoom calls. I'll just briefly tell the story. I walked in on my middle child, who's like true hearts and fish. She's, very punk rock. She'll be fine when she gets older, but guiding her right now is a little challenging. 9:30 in the morning, she was in bed with her laptop open. She was in class, but she had turned off her screen and she was sleeping. She's 9.
She's brilliant.
I was like, no, but well done, well played. You thought that out.
I mean, actually, this is just me pre-recorded from a prior episode. I'm sleeping right now too.
Wait, there's a shortcut?
There is. That's the
thing.
I didn't know either. I'm here. What?
You're doing it wrong, guys. No, seriously, she sounds like a brilliant young woman.
She's brilliant, but
very successful someday.
Yeah,
I can only guess that you would raise a brilliant young woman.
Thank you.
But I am going to circle back to Watchmen just for a second, because one of the topics of the night is superheroes and sci-fi and comics. I just was so curious. I came into watching the show without having read the comic and or ever seeing the film. So I knew it existed. I had heard of Kitty Pryde before, but that's not a character. I just messed that up. Anyway, point being, I had heard of some of the characters before, and I knew the existence of it, but it was a very interesting thing to almost reverse learn the original story, like to reverse engineer. But for somebody, like you, who loves the genre so much, were you familiar, and then what did you think of the reimagining?
All right, so I've read Watchmen in the original form. I have a trade paperback. I've seen the movie, obviously, and the HBO series was the best way to get a good lesson in American history, untaught American history.
Here.
And because I watched it with my girlfriend, and she's like, "Did you know about this?" And I had to honestly say, I didn't learn it in school. I learned it from my mother's family, and it's not taught in school, And it's just like, if this is how we're going to educate and enlighten a lot of people, fine. HBO, listen, here's another $500 million. Let's do a season 2. Let's get it out there.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I know some people are like, oh, well, this character isn't this way and they wrote it that way. And you know what? You can say that about every comic book movie, every comic book show. Oh, this character is supposed to go this way. Yes, but it's the interpretation that's there now. It's like it's what's in the writer's hands. It's phenomenal, enlightening, educational, and just good to watch. If I had to do a quick review,
I have to say there were a couple episodes, and Beth, when you do get a breath, that I would say if you didn't like the genre, and you didn't even like the subject matter, there are some episodes that are so sublimely created, they are like high art.
Oh.
I mean, there is an episode where we sort of see a character inhabit another character and jump time, like from I think the 30s to the present. The episode is so crafted. I don't know how else to say it. It is a masterpiece. It is an absolute masterpiece. I mean, some of the best TV I've ever seen in my life.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
think-
so all of you guys out there in drinking land, please check out Watchmen if you haven't. Yeah.
I think the only thing that comes close to Watchmen is probably Lovecraft County. And if you have not, you should. If you have, don't spoil it for anybody.
I couldn't agree more. I've been watching that as well, and I would argue though it's not quite as tightly written. It's not quite. I mean, it's doing a lot of heavy lifting. The book is very dense, but like
right.
It's not quite there. And also, you know, it's been frustrating because I think that it gave us information very in little tiny bits. You know, that by the end it all makes sense, but when you're watching it, you're kind of, and actually I do have one criticism of that show. This is Jenny's hot take. Sorry, I didn't mean to do hot take TV criticism. I was very upset with the Korean War episode that then I felt like that character got really thrown away. Like there was so much love given to her and she was such a beautiful character. And then it was like, bye, where'd you go? No one knows. Where'd you go? And although she was obviously engaged in, you know, in the final conclusion, but it's still like, she was such a great character, you know? Okay, and that's my 2 cents.
All right, if you're going to do hot takes, so you have to change the background to like a brick wall. You have a stand-up mic.
I know. Someday I'm going to quit this stupid whiskey business and go work at the Hollywood Improv. But
you give me a tight 5 minutes on airline food.
Tight 5 minutes. Okay, you guys. They said it was turkey. It didn't look like turkey. I am going to take us into our tasting tonight because we have a lot of stuff to talk about. Because oh my gosh, as usual, Beth she blows me away. But we're going to start with our whiskey first, as we always do. And tonight we have left the upper east coast of Scotland, the Northern Sea, and we have traveled all the way down to the southwest coast, to the Hebrides Islands, to a very special, magical little tiny island distillery called Jura. And yes, it is Jura, not Cura or Jura. I hear that all the time. It is Jura with a J. Jura is such an incredible, magical place. And ironically, Jura is actually older than the Dalmore. A lot of people don't realize this. Dalmore was founded in 1839, but Jura was founded in 1810 by the Laird Archibald Campbell. So this is an extremely, extremely old distillery. The distillery has like this really checkered past. Basically, the Laird's son didn't really want to run it, so he just hired a series of managers. And they went through manager after manager after manager. In 1853, it was sold finally to the last manager. He was kind of a jerk, and he got in a fight with the Campbells and decided to actually pull the roof off the place because there was a rule that if a place didn't have a roof, you couldn't tax anybody on it. So it basically fell into ruin. So this is about 1901 when the beautiful island distillery just completely falls into ruin. And Jura sat silent for just about 60 years. And it was very depressing. And during that time, the island of Jura, which is located in the Inner Hebrides Islands, it's just more interior towards Scotland from the famous Isle of Islay, all the people that lived there, the Duracs, as they were called, were leaving the island. There was no industry. There was no way to make money. It was really stressful. So 2 local Duracs decided to reawaken the distillery. And in 1959, they partnered with a company you may have heard of if you're a single malt nerd, Charles McKinley and Company. And they embarked on the reconstruction and revitalization of the original buildings. So eventually, Charles McKinley, you may know, was absorbed by Invergordon Distillers. And so it transferred to Invergordon. And then the company that I currently work for, White and Mackay, which was the same time in which famous whiskey maker Richard Patterson, celebrating his 50 years in the industry this year, also took over overseeing the brand. So Jura is a challenging whiskey. And Beth, you know this because you were trying to pair with this whiskey. One of the challenges is when we first came back online in 95, the whiskey was just trying to please the palate of the day. It was like kind of smoky, kind of vanilla, not a lot of specific character. And then for a while, we were making variable whiskeys. So we were making some peated, some unpeated, different bottlings, all good, but just no really distinct focus for this whiskey. And then finally, just about, I guess it's 2.5 years ago now, Richard's protege, Greg Glass, the absolute fantastic Greg Glass, who came to us from Compass Box, took over Jura, and we have revitalized, just like the distillery, the whiskey itself. And now we have a very specific and beautiful distillery character and style. And that style is that we actually make two different kinds of whiskey. So on Jura Island, we will make unpeated and peated whiskey. And I'm talking from grain literally to final marrying. So grain is separate, fermentation separate, distillation separate, initial maturation separate, and then we just bring it together in that final marrying cask before we put it in the bottle. The peated whiskey that we make comes in at around 50 to 55 parts per million. So that's going to be a heavier peat than something like Ardbeg or Lefroy. So it's really, really peated. But then the unpeated we make, when we blend them together in about a 60-40 blend, a little, messing up here and there or messing around here and there to get it just right, it's going to bring it down to 15 ppm. So it's taking it so far down that we are not even in that Isla category anymore. And our distillery character comes across as more like a peat and sweet. So there's always a sweetness of a bright green apple. And then there's just that little kiss of peat from the 15 parts per million. This particular beauty tonight is the Jura 10, which I particularly love using in cocktails because I think it has like some really good teeth and the apple note always blends very well. But this particular baby is coming in at a hot 40% compared to the lower ABV wines that Beth has been working with. And it is finished in Oloroso sherry casks. So it starts its life in ex-bourbon American oak, just like the Dalmore. And then just about half of it, again, give or take a little bit, is transferred into those Oloroso sherry casks. Remember, that is an oxidative aged sherry. So this sherry is also going to have tannic notes, wood notes. It's going to bring all those colors to the whiskey. And it's going to, of course, bring those fortified sherry wine Oloroso notes. So I love this whiskey. I tend to prefer things that are on the lower peat side. I'm not a big peat head. I mean, I do love a good salad Lefroy every now and then, but I tend to prefer things that are a little bit more of a kiss of peat. And to sort of wrap it up, Greg Glass, who is just imagining this gorgeous future for Jura, he always says that he uses peat like salt in soup. You don't get a big, pot of salt and add soup to it. You have soup and you add just a little bit of salt to bring out every other flavor. So he uses the peat to enhance everything else that's happening in the bottle. Now, briefly, the future of Jura. Currently, we are one island with one road, one distillery, one hotel, and one pub, of course, and 212 delightful Duracs that, because of the revitalization of our tiny island community and our distillery, have stayed, and the population has maintained since we began rebuilding the distillery in 1959. So we are enormously proud of this. I am a huge Jura fan. I am always excited to talk about it. And I was so excited that I did a risky thing and I wore a green jacket in front of a green screen. Okay, Beth. Now we talked about this, way in advance. And the secret to the long and short of it, I always say, I'm the short shot of whiskey. Beth is the long, tall Sally pour of delicious wine. But since the beginning, you have said that working with a peated single malt was going to be a challenge. So tell us what you did.
All right. So I went with the Paulmeyer wines. If you were with us last week, it was a beautiful wine. This is their Jason label, which is essentially their second label, or it started off as their second label and now has branched on to be its own thing. And I paired the Pinot Noir with the Jura 10. My angle for this pairing was to find a wine with a richness of expression of fruit that would not fight that kiss of peat, and you would find a harmonious finish. You would have the peat and that richness of fruit commingling on the palate, on the finish. That was my angle. So this is 100% Pinot Noir from Sonoma County. It's hand harvested, destemmed, free-run juice is aged in French oak for 9 months. It sees less oak than the Paulmeyer labeling. This is meant to be the wine that you would drink in, relatively immediately in your cellar while you're waiting for the Paulmeyer to sit for a little bit longer. This just had that rich plush, that cherry blossom on the nose, dark blueberries, blackberries on the palate that I thought would be, and there's a richness to the fruit that I thought would be harmonious with the Oloroso sherry casks and with that kiss of peat. So that was my pairing.
I think I mean, as usual, it's fantastic. So Lincoln, you said you had watched a couple episodes of the show. You'll notice I always do the double nose.
Mm-hmm.
I encourage this. It is such a gift to try the aroma. Beth, I'm definitely 100% getting that blackberry note.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is obvious. It's almost like blackberry jam.
Mm-hmm.
Lincoln, what do you think? How often? I mean, I know you said you're a little bit more of a spirits than a wine drinker. How often do you pair whiskey and wine, or do you ever?
I only pair it when my girlfriend's having it. Like she,
Fair.
Like I've said many a time, I don't have a great wine palate.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate it. I have to say words.
We also accept interpretive dance. So, you know.
No, you told me I left the leotard at work. It's killing me.
I always say, like one of the running jokes of the show is I have a brain injury, and sometimes I just can't think of a word, and I just don't worry about it. I'm like, it'll come, or somebody will tell me.
Right. For Steve's previous comment about 3 kids, sometimes I'm like, where am I? So I get it. Mm-hmm.
No, actually, this is a very good wine. There are very few that I can say, oh my God, this is really good. This is really good.
Awesome. I'm glad you're enjoying it.
I have to agree, Beth. I mean, I think Paul Meyer, I mean, like, honestly, we haven't had a bad wine. I mean, everything has just been so specific and unique. I mean, even like, I just remember the rosé we did on the first episode, but like something about Paul Meyer, I think you've won a fan, out of me. Like, I think I'm going to continue engaging with the brand because it's so luscious. And I do tend to lean more towards Sonoma versus Napa. And I don't know really why that is. I must have wine that is, but is it because I tend to notice there is a bigger fruit in these wines, and that could be intention of the winemaker, or it could be the climate. Do you have any perspective on that?
Their intention with these wines is to make rich, bold wines that are very expressive with the fruit, but are still elegant. You still have the structure, you have the acid to counterbalance the richness of the fruit. That's really vital, or else the wine, you don't necessarily want to go for that second or third sip. The wines that don't have the acid, you're like, okay, that's great. It has the richness, but there's also, it's not balanced. So you do want to go in for that. Well, at this point, maybe my 4th or 5th sip. So I feel that, I mean, but when you get into Sonoma and Napa, you can make general statements that Sonoma will get the cooling influence of the winds coming off the ocean. Napa, you have mountain fruit, you have valley floor fruit. So there's differences, and there's the microclimate. So you will tend to maybe see different grapes being grown in those regions for that reason itself. So it could be the wines you normally like to drink. If you're like Pinot Noir, you're probably going to see more Pinot Noirs coming from Sonoma because it's they can be so dynamic from there. So that could be it.
Fascinating. Well, we get, I say we, I mean, the folks on Jura, we do get a lot of maritime influence. Not as much as Isla, because remember, Isla protects us from the most harshness that the sea can offer. Although this is like one of those little fun facts about Jura. Ardbeg many years ago released a bottle called Corey Brecken, which I actually many years ago did speak to Ardbeg, and I represented that bottle. But the Corey Brecken Whirlpool is actually off Jura. It is not off Isla. It belongs to us. And this bottle is shaped like this to have a space between the two bottles so it can make it across the Corey Brecken, because these bottles are literally put in a boat and taken across the whirlpool. But that being said, it's really interesting to pair such a roughshod island, like hardy Scottish place with such an elegant, delicate wine, a wine that like it has robust fruit, but it is truly elegant. It's a much different energy than working with the Dalmore. So Lincoln, I mean, you are our mysterious third. I mean, so, and the challenge you face is you have to take the most ungettable place in the world, Jura's whiskey, 10-year-old, which is young for a single malt, right? And it's mature but young. And then, you know, with this beautiful Paulmeyer Jason with a Y from Sonoma, and then translate that into something ephemeral. So, sir, what have you brought to our tasting tonight?
All right. So tonight I embraced my nerdiness. I embraced my comic book nerdiness, my television nerdiness, my cocktail book nerdiness. So I'm going to start with the Jura. So first, I did make a cocktail, just because. I went with a twist on the silent third, which just basically 1.5 of Jura, 1 ounce of triple sec. I went with an ounce of fresh lime juice with just a splash of simple syrup, shaken, not stirred, and strained and poured into a chilled coupe. Because if you say coupe, you just sound trashy. No, but anyway. So that's how I started with the Jura. Excuse me, hold on. Oh, that is good.
So wait, I'm unclear. Like you got the whiskey and the wine. Why did we not get cocktails?
I know, like I virtual. I went.
They're hard to ship, you know, across the country.
So as I researched a cocktail, I thought about like, all right, so what's really gonna go well with this? Like, what can I pair with this? And a friend of mine reminded me how much I love old television and good television. So I decided to go a little off book. So I paired it with, I don't know if you can see that one right there. Life on Mars. It's a BBC show. It's about this detective in, let's say 2006, who has an accident, winds up in a coma, and wakes up in the 70s. And is basically his trip trying to find out exactly what's going on with him. And it's a nice twist on the procedural because it's slightly sci-fi. It's a little bit procedural, and then it's just a wild ride. And on top of all of that, you get some of the best British rock anyone could possibly hope for. I mean, of course, you get Life on Mars with Bowie. You get Roxy Music. You get Atomic Rooster. You get everything you could possibly think of in regards to good Brit rock. And it's just one of those trips where it's like, how many seasons? 2? I have a bottle in front of me. I'm on board.
I love that. So now I'm gonna have to totally go and check this out because I love BBC. And I also love the fact they do limited run series because I think there's a lot to be said about something is done, and when it's done, it's done. You don't need to drag it out until it dies like a crawling, zombie. Not that I'm referencing any particular show, but anyway. Yeah, I stopped watching that a long time ago. Anyway, point being, I think this is so fascinating because oftentimes we stumble upon accidental themes here on the live cast. And one of the things I think is so interesting about your pairing, Lincoln, there's a gentleman named Mark Bruce who decided to leave his very comfortable home on the mainland and go out to Jura to be our distillery ambassador. And it was a harsh reality check of how difficult it is to live on a remote island, in the Atlantic Ocean, and the weather is crazy, and like 364 days of the year, it's like freezing and windy, and like what that really meant. But he's so happy. But it's just funny because we did a tasting with Mark. We were doing some long distance work, and he was like, "It's like going to live on Mars." That's exactly what he said. He was like,
"Nice."
I know.
I think that sounds amazing. I'm like, can I go there for lockdown? That would be wonderful.
Well, to give some context, I mentioned earlier, George Orwell, after George Orwell's wife died, he moved to the island to complete the book in 1984. which is really not only prescient but timely at the moment. And he spent a lot of time there. And the reason he went there is he wanted peace and quiet. He wanted to be left alone. And the Duracs gave him that. They didn't bother him. They brought him stuff he needed when he needed it. But he finished the novel there. But I mean, it is really a place to go and hide. It is really, truly a place to be safe. And since the pandemic happened, the island's pretty much been on lockdown. We've been fully closed, and there's only really one delivery that comes a couple times a week of groceries that come from the mainland to Isla to Jura. So it has been a very remote place, and I can only imagine feeling so isolated. So are there any particular moments from the show Life on Mars that you're like, that kind of spring to mind? Any particular like episodes or situations it's in?
There's one episode that just they're going after this very violent gang, and they're authorized to use pistols because at the time, like a lot of the cops in Britain in London didn't carry weapons, so they're all getting distributed weapons. And one of the older cops talks to the younger one, played by, and I'm gonna just cheat for a hot minute, Johnson. Wow, go with the first answer. They're like, oh, do you know how to use a weapon? Are you a good shot? And he just says, you should see my PlayStation scores. And it's just one of those lines that you could just throw away, but then you realize, yeah, they have no idea what he's talking about. But you know what? I know what he's talking about. So
funny.
There's a lot of good moments in it. Like if you like procedurals, you like a little sci-fi, this is the show to watch.
I'm always very into like light sci-fi, where kind of what you're discussing, where it's present, but it's not the focus of the entire thing. And we're throwing around a lot of references tonight. And for those of you out there, I feel like I should put like some kind of like guide, in the description. That was one of the things I always liked about Black Mirror, is that some of them are very direct and very specific, but there are episodes that are just very like the sci-fi elements, or even the hard sci-fi elements, are very much kind of in the background of a reality that everyone accepts, and they're not at the forefront of the storytelling. Especially the episode with the bees. It's a very interesting episode about bee populations dying and using drone bees. And it kind of addresses climate change. It kind of addresses those issues, but it's actually a procedural. It's a murder mystery. And that just exists in the background of this procedural that's taking place. I'm just really curious if the show was reimagined by the BBC and was created for an audience today, kind of like the Watchmen idea, what decade would he wake up in, and who do you think would play the lead character?
Well, okay, here's the slight twist on your question. The Americans, us, we tried to redo this show, and I believe it was David E. Kelly that did it, and it was on ABC, and it didn't last a season.
Really?
Yeah, they made a lot of American changes, and it just didn't go. So if it was me, I would honestly love to see a cop from the 1980s, like have an accident and then wake up now, just to see the difference and whatever they tried to do then, how it didn't or did work now, and to learn modern policing, and I think I'd like to see a reverse on it. Lead actor, it's actually, you know what? I'm gonna go lead actress, and I'm forgetting her name, from Russian Doll. Natasha Lyonne.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, okay. First of all, you are welcome back anytime. We can turn. But no, I mean, first of all, that yes, and then Russian Doll. That show.
Oh yeah.
Is an inexplicable time jump. I don't want to mess it up for anybody who hasn't seen it, but It is a show that's not really about the sci-fi or the supernatural elements. It's actually about a self-discovery journey, but they use that as this tool, which is so brilliant. Right. Yeah.
And I think that's good storytelling. It's like the sci-fi doesn't beat you over the head. It's there. it's an element. And then the rest of it just draws you in. And you're at a point where it's like, I was watching something that I need a PhD to watch. Get out. I had no idea. And you're in.
Right.
Well,
right.
I mean, that's a beautiful literary trope that, I mean, I was actually thinking of, oh goodness, Orlando by Virginia Woolf. I'm an English
Right.
teacher.
Yes.
And, Tilda Swinton played the movie years ago. And you kind of, you have that, oh, what is that? The benefit of a doubt. It's not that, but you kind of give it, okay, the grace.
Disbelief.
Exactly. Thank you. That suspension where you're like, all right, just tell me the story. And it's more the exploration of the character's development, even though weird stuff's going on in the background. And then, you know, there's a gender change. You're like, oh, okay. But it's such a, when it's done beautifully and it's done well, it's so amazing because it helps you to see that bigger picture, you know? So it makes me excited to see that like it's still being done really well because it's such a powerful tool when it's wielded successfully.
Well, I was curious, Beth, you know, like what, I mean, because I do know you like some of this universe. What influences in your world, you know, sci-fi, fantasy? I mean, the thing is when you say nerd, because I'm a gigantic nerd, like that's a huge, you know, genre of things. Like what is, what are the things that have influenced you? I mean, whether it was emotional, personal growth or something that you were just like, wow, this fantasy novel really touched me.
Oh goodness. So growing up and especially before children, I used to read like a novel every 2 days because I'm just a really voracious reader and then had kids and but growing up, definitely I read all of the classics like Ray Bradbury, all of that. I read that in high school. Went through and still I'm in my Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Douglas Adams.
Of course, I mean,
you know, 42.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, don't forget your towel. If you have not read that, everybody.
I got you know, my pocket lint. You know, I'm gonna go grab a pint at the pub because I know that's important. I went through that.
It should be required reading. It should literally be required reading.
And if you don't get references, I make a judgment call on you as a human. I'm like, I don't know if we can be friends. And then Ursula Le Guin, I read all of that when I was in college. So those are like, that's my experience. I haven't read a lot actually I haven't read a lot lately unless it was a wine book because I've been studying or you know something about fast cars for my son or anything, you know, like that's been what I've been working with lately. So that's, I don't know, I guess mine is more classic and I haven't had, so it's fascinating to hear your recommendations because I do miss that side of my life when I have the time. So I've been actually writing things down in between my sips. So I'm going to save I'm taking notes.
I love this. Because that's the whole point of this is that we're enjoying an incredible wine. We're enjoying incredible spirit. We're enjoying incredible conversation.
Yeah.
And that, you know, the idea is to pair something that is not literally, you know, another beverage with a beverage. But, you know, I think my love of this genre, and I think a lot of people would say this, whether it's, you know, exploring their inner workings or imagining to be somebody else. But like when I was a little girl, there was a series called The Secret of the Unicorn Queen. And you can find it on the internet, my friends. But basically it was about a teenager that fell through time because she had this sort of like wacky friend that was kind of modeled after like the Doc from Back to the Future, and fell into this alternate universe where there are these warrior women that rode unicorns and battled an evil wizard. And I'm telling you, these books are golden, man. Like if you are a pre-adolescent, like suburban girl living in the middle of Georgia, like this is like, I could be a unicorn princess warrior person. So that definitely influenced me. I would also argue that the Golden Compass series, way before it was ever made into a film or
Right.
anything. I, fully embrace that. That's such an intriguing book that deals with like religion and institution and like the journey of children and like growing up and like accepting your final form. I mean, I just think that sci-fi fantasy and comic books offer an escape that we can be greater than we are. We can be more than is in our small world. I mean, so Lincoln, was there something that you like, I mean, as a younger man, as a boy, identified that really got you going, a specific character you latched onto?
Well, so growing up, so I struggled in school, and my mother, being the genius that she is, gave me my first comic book to read. And it really opened my eyes to reading, and it got me to read more. And it started my my quest for knowledge. And it was an old Spider-Man comic, and if I had it today, it'd probably be tattered and all ripped up. But Spider-Man got me smart. I'll say that right now. And yeah, so Spider-Man like holds a place in my heart. The next one I would go to, just comic book wise, is Batman, and not like now Batman because it's popular, but then Batman, like the '70s, Neil Adams, yeah, the '70s stuff. Just that really got me to read more and to buy more. I didn't read, and this is gonna piss off a lot of people. I did not read Lord of the Rings. And I know a lot of sci-fi and fantasy people are like, how dare you not? But I didn't.
It's okay. So Lincoln, I always refer to the second book of the Lord of the Rings as like the Bible, because there's like 1,000 pages of the lineage of all the kings, and you're like, I think I'm just gonna like just throw this through a window or something. Right. It's so freaking boring. But besides that section, everything else is really good.
Well, no, it was never like, oh, this is horrible, I'm not gonna read it. It was just like I just never read it. I read Asimov. I read Cosmos as a kid. Just like I read that, but yeah, I didn't touch Rings. And to speak of Hitchhiker's Guide. So I was at a very horrible job a long, long time ago, and I had the opportunity to quit. And so I wrote my resignation letter, and I was going through like titles for it. And I started out like the first line was "So long and thanks for the fish." That was going to be it. But then I realized like no one is going to get that, but it's like it made me happy. Like I giggled as I was typing. I'm like, thanks so long for the finish. I don't want to work anymore. I'll see you never. But it's just one of those lines. Like, and I told my friend about it, and he was like, you should have put that in there. What are you thinking? I'm like, I couldn't, because they would have looked at me weird. So, but
that's awesome.
And I almost wish I had, but it was weird because, well, not weird, but I transitioned from that, and I themed the letter in the style of James Bond's quit letter, his resignation in Casino Royale. Like he wrote this very tight 3-line, 1-paragraph resignation letter, and it was it, and he was done. And I'm like, that's what I did. Like that's what I really wanted to do. There wasn't any like, oh, this is a horrible place and I'm going to see people again. I just wrote line 1, line 2. As of X, I will no longer be employed. Thank you.
Wow. I mean, yes, I think if I was your boss and I received so long and thanks for all the fish, I would have called you and been like, please stay and have a raise. Because you're too smart for this group of people here. I mean, and then, and also referring to Douglas Adams, there's the other book that a lot of people haven't read, A Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul, which they made a series. I have not watched it, but that is a fantastic book. I mean, truly fantastic. And Beth, I actually have 2 more references for you, and I'm going to throw this out to whoever's watching tonight. There's an incredible novel called The Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, which is about 2 guys that write comic books in New York City. And I think it goes from like 1938 to maybe 1950 something. And it's fantastic. One of them is a magician, and it kind of follows their exploits as comic book writers. And they're surrounded by real, like, DC and Marvel and all the famous ones we know. And then the other book that is, I don't know if you'd call it fantasy, I don't know if you call it sci-fi, absurdism, but I think it would really resonate with everyone, is Jitterbug Perfume.
Oh, yes, I have. Yeah. Oh, I forgot about his oeuvre of work.
I mean, it's like gods, monsters.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I have never heard of this. Please enlighten, educate me.
No, I'm not going to enlighten or educate, my friend. I'm going to buy you a copy on Amazon and send it to your house.
Yes, please.
It's a crazy, and there's actually a character in the book called Ren, so it always makes me smile. But I've recommended that book to so many people. It is about life, death, the death of gods. I would actually argue that a sister book to that book is also American Gods. They share some.
Okay.
themes.
Well, I've read American Gods.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah.
So the American Gods,
Robbins.
the kind of, I know, right? But the kind of the connection there is like the death of gods and like what it means to when you don't believe in somebody anymore, and then
Right.
so there's a common theme there. Gosh, I feel like this. Beth, these weeks have kind of been a coming out party for how much of a weirdo I am.
You're not weird.
No, I'm just multifaceted.
There you go.
But it's just funny because I think that sometimes, and this is the gift of the show, is like, when you're talking whiskey or wine, or in your case, Lincoln, you're writing about these things, we don't always get to share our other interests or really kind of fly our freak flag about the other things that get us up in the morning and make us excited. I'm really curious. Actually, I'm going to ask this question of everybody involved tonight.
Mm-hmm.
What are the big jokes that's been happening with humanity? The humanity.
Which one?
Yeah, you're gonna have to pick one. Specify.
Let's go for the semi-enlightened, like the upper middle enlightened. Is that we got so interested in language and we got so engaged in language that we've gone all the way back to hieroglyphics. So now we only send emojis, right?
Mm-hmm.
We got so interested in media and so engaged in media that we've gone all the way back to radio. So everyone listens to podcasts.
Yeah.
So my question being that there are things such as tablets and other things called tablets I can't think of. What was that thing? I'm losing my mind tonight. There was a thing that was referred to, it's like Kindle. There you go, Kindle. Comic books and the idea of the graphic novel is something that is so tactile, visual, beautiful, something that you really engage in a physical sense, not just the emotional or the psychological sense. Where do you think the future of comic books are going? The actual printed comic book, like the art of the comic book, when we have so many options today of visual stimulus. I'm going to throw this to you first, Lincoln. I mean, do you think that actual object will continue to thrive and be produced?
I will say it will be. I have a lot of Twitter friends who love comics, and as much as you can read something on a tablet or a Kindle, it's not the same. It's not the same flavor of four-colored crack that you go to the store for. And the mere fact that I've witnessed Twitter debates between owning actual comic books, floppies, as opposed to owning a trade, tells me that it will endure. I'm not going to be oh wait, I was going to make a poster joke, but I'm not going to. It is something that will endure. I don't care how big or how many 4K resolutions or pixels you can put in it. You're going to want that feel in your hand. You're going to want to smell that paper. You're going to want to see that ink, and you're really going to want to experience that color. I mean, I've got 4, maybe 5 short boxes of comics that if you told me today I can get it all on the Kindle, I would not. I can't. I would not give that up. And I have friends who probably feel the same way. I mean, if we were going through a Twitter feed of people who still collect, I'll show you basements, I'll show you walls full of books that Yeah, they would never give up just to have all of it on a Kindle or on a tablet. And don't get me wrong, like the transfer of technology, the transfer of that into that technology is wonderful and amazing. And if that's what you want to do with it, if that's your jam, fine. But realize that the book itself, that floppy comic book will not die. It will be around somewhere. And I'll also say that it's secular. It all comes around. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to stop babbling.
No, thank you. That was eloquent and beautiful. And I think there's a lot to be said there about the tactile experience of holding and smelling a book, because they are beautiful objects. Beth, what do you think?
I agree. I mean, I think when the Kindle came out, didn't actually book sales end up getting better? Like it didn't actually like stop the publishing industry in terms of like the hard copies. Independent bookstores are actually, they're kind of doing okay, and it's because people want to support the books. That being said, continue to support them because there's fewer of them. But for me, I feel that, I'm an English lit major at heart. I mean, I just moved and I have probably about 30 boxes of books that I need to unpack. Would it be better to have it all on a Kindle? For the move, yes. But I want one day to have a book full, like a library room, because I want that in that chair. And I'll be drinking some Jura, thinking about the days we were doing the show.
And you're like, leave me alone on my island, please.
Exactly. And I'll be on Jura. So it'll be great. But, a couple years ago when March came out, I bought that for my eldest daughter to read. And, John Lewis wrote that, or, he was a part of it. Someone else did the drawings and whatnot. It's his story. And it was the best format for her to read and actually be able to understand the visual and the words. It was much more powerful than if it was just a regular book or seeing it on TV. And she actually, it inspired her to start drawing in that style. My children are wonderful artists. They get that from their dad. And so, and he was helping her on how to, work on her skills. So she works on that. And she reads manga. She's just that world. She loves it. And I don't see that going away at all.
I love that you referenced that, because, one of the changes that was made in the modern retelling of American Gods was media. In the first series is very like old media, and it's played by Gillian Anderson. And the new media is K-pop. And like the whole Asian influence on what comic books look like, and that whole universe. And when you go to Japan, it's like you see all of these young people that are reading literal books. I mean, they're literally looking at these graphic novels. And it is a powerful social force there. So I think that's really cool that your daughter is into that. I love hearing about your kids always. By the way, I hope it's okay to say this because you're on a live cast. Do you mind sharing your three children's beautiful names, because they have freaking comic book names. They have the best names.
So there's, I'll give the middle names because we thought out the middle names too. So there's Arabella Zoe, that's the eldest. She's A to Z. Yeah, he did that. It's true. Child number 2 is Beatrix Electra, and that is with an X and with a K. So it's shocking that someone named after Agamemnon's daughter would be stubborn and forceful. What were we thinking? And then the last child, he was going to be the last child, so we gave him all the names. So he's Maximilian Alaric Wolfgang. So he's named after 2 emperors and Mozart.
I'm telling you, Beth Hickey is raising mutants that will someday take over the country. These super powerful.
Is your husband bald? Does he have a school out in Westchester?
He has a giant mansion where he teaches children.
Yeah, just, let me know. I mean,
Yeah.
No, these are good. These are good names, my love. These are really powerful names. And so we are eking into the end of our hour. And God, I'm enjoying this conversation so much. And I'm so sorry for all of you watching out there, because what you don't get to see is we always have the after show where we hang out and talk about all the other stuff that didn't make it into the show. But I did want to give a shout out. I love that you were talking about your daughter's experience with that novel, because I remember, this is heavy, guys. We're getting heavy for a second, okay? Like, not bringing the room down, but someone I love very much that influenced my life enormously is a woman named Kathy Preston, or Kati Preston, who is a Holocaust survivor. And she not only was just this force of nature in my young life, but just she still is a force of nature. She's still out there fighting the good fight and like doing all the good stuff. And I remember when I was first in her house, I was just hanging out in her library and looking at stuff. She had a copy of Mouse, and I had never seen it before. And I just pulled this thing down. And I mean, she's like, at that point, I think she was in her mid 60s. And she had purchased this. And if you're not familiar with it, I do highly recommend you to check it out. It's MAUS, not like mouse like English, but
right.
Mouse like German.
Yeah, German, yeah.
And I remember I was looking at it, and I remember my mouth dropped open because it was such a powerful piece of work. And she walks by me, and she's goddess among us, and she goes, "Oh yes, the Nazis were cats." And just keeps walking. And I was like, this woman is a boss. But I mean, that's where I see this genre transcend what you can do with a graphic novel that allows me or your daughter or any person to approach something from a space that you see it through completely new eyes. And gosh, if we've accomplished nothing in this little web live cast series, I hope that people have not only gotten to meet all of our incredible guests, like Lincoln, who came on tonight, but have actually gotten to approach the whiskeys and the wines through new eyes, because it's not always about these serious tastings. Sometimes it's about like the joyful thing in your private life that you bring also to the experience of enjoying a good spirit or a good wine. So Beth, I'm going to do the mandatory thing that we always do. Where can people acquire the Paul Meyer Jason Pinot Noir 2018 from Sonoma?
You can go to your local wine stores to support them. If they don't have it, they will happily, most likely, order it for you and be thrilled to have the business, to do the business.
It is available in New York, because I did order it directly for Lincoln, so I know it's available.
Awesome. That being said, wine.com, Total Wine, the larger, the shipping, the internet buying that we're all doing these days. So it's available there. You can also go to the Paul Meyer website, and Jason website, they will happily explain how you can purchase as well. Wonderful.
And of course, if you're interested in learning more about the history of Jura single malt, you can of course go to jurawhisky.com and follow at Jura Whiskey in the Instagram, the gram of Instas. And we just have such a rich history. It is a place that is of the place. And I'm so proud to represent it. And so, Lincoln, thank you so much for taking the time. I know this, because you're on the East Coast, it's a bit of a later night for you, so I really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
It was my pleasure. Like I said, it's normally my Xbox time, but I was happy to give it up for you guys.
Thank you so much for giving us your Xbox time. We really appreciate it. I align in alignment with the two of you. I'm going to try to read more because I do miss it. And it is something that I think my attention span has been shortened by all the media that we are exposed to today.
What are you talking about? There's something going on?
What? No.
Is there something going on?
What would you say?
Should I turn it?
4,000 counted? What would you say?
I don't.
Yeah.
Did something happen this week? I mean,
don't worry about it.
No.
Okay.
Enjoy that cocktail.
It's so weird. I logged on to CNN, and it was like just Wolf Blitzer sitting there like looking desperate for something to talk about. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen.
All right, because I mean, my phone is silent. I haven't gotten any alerts or anything.
No, not a thing.
Not a one.
Anyway, on that note, I am going to slowly, like I always do, close all the windows down. Thank you so much, Lincoln, for being here tonight. It is a
I'm happy to show up. Seriously,
Okay, I'm sorry.
Ladies are wonderful.
I'm going to be indulgent for 1 second. The last time I was in a room with Lincoln Chinnery that I remember, now I could have been in a room past that, because, we were on the second floor of the Dead Rabbit, and Lynn House, the grande dame of American whiskey, who I adore, at that time was presenting Palma. And it was you and David Bailey, who I adore. And I wasn't drinking at the time. And everyone was like, why did you come to this event if you weren't drinking? And I was like, because I just want to see you. And that was the last time I think that you and I really spent a good, meaningful couple of hours together. That's like years ago, and that sucks. We got to fix that. So
Yes, we do. And
yes,
I tell you right now, just very quickly, I see Bailey every once in a while. We smoke cigars, drink almost too much bourbon and or whiskey. And if I could choose my brother, it would be him and Josh Davis. Like, if I had those two, definitely.
What a sweet thing to say. I've actually seen David more recently, because he came to, I taught a seminar with Walter Easterbrook about 18 months ago. And then we had an after party at Blacktail, and David came to the after party. So I did actually get to see him somewhat recently.
Oh, I miss Blacktail.
I know. Like, why don't we just pour out one for all the bars that are suffering through this?
Oh, can I just tell a very quick story?
Yes, because it's my show and it's Beth's show, and we can take as long as we want.
So I reached out to an old friend-ish, and he was there like when I first started writing about cocktails and bars and whatnot. And like, I just reached out to him to say hi and see how you're doing, like just general. And he wrote me back and he said something like, "Oh, how are you doing with all these bars closing? LOL." And I just got insulted and angry about it. It's like, you understand, like, dreams are being shuttered, lives are being crushed. It's not something you would joke about. And I understand a lot of the general public doesn't realize like the devastation of this, but understand, like, someone put their life into opening this thing, and now they have to shut it down. And I was like, you know what? This is the last time we'll be talking. And it was just like, I've chosen my allegiance. It's like, jokes are nice and cute and whatnot, but there's some things it's like, listen, you can't. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, I mean, I think that's something like, if you have the money, extra money right now, I know that some people are hurting because this pandemic, but if you have the extra money, go and get the cocktails to go. If you feel comfortable, go sit and have a quick couple cocktails, leave a massive tip, and turn that table so they can generate revenue. I mean, people are hanging on. Do what you can. Same with restaurants. Just go, because everyone is just, they're hanging on. So, and it's so devastating. The Somm community has been utterly devastated. And the restaurant, and all of it, and the bar, it's all connected. So just, if you do have the extra funds, just go and support. It's crazy times, but it's a wonderful, beautiful community of people that have become friends. And we all, our hearts ache for those that, it's just, we got to come together. So, and do what we can.
I think it's an incredible shout out, and I agree with both of you. And I think that a lot of people in America don't realize that there are the Danny Meyers of the world, but most restaurant owners are small business owners, and many of them are family business owners, and many of them have leveraged everything they're worth to keep that local pub that you love to hang out in open. And for them, it's not like, oh, this is inconvenient, no one's showing up. It's like, no, I can't pay my mortgage because I've leveraged everything I could to pay my waiters and my waitresses and my bartenders as long as I possibly could. And now I'm out of money. So I concur. If you can go out to your local pubs, your local bars, your local restaurants, you can be safe. You can social distance appropriately.
be safe.
We're doing that in LA. I mean, we're very fortunate to have good weather year round. So last night I was at a wonderful location in Santa Monica, Fig at the Fairmont. They're doing it right. So when you can, in the safest way possible, please do, because, you know, I think the joke here, Lincoln, is most of our guests have not been from the hospitality community. You are a little bit of a rare bird on the show. And we did that for a reason, but I think as three people speaking from the hospitality community, spirits, wine, and someone who is a cocktail enthusiast and brilliant writer, these are our friends. We love them, and they're hurting. So thank you for that call out. I appreciate it. And on that note, I'm going to shut down the show. I'm just going to say what I always say before I bounce, and we shut down the show, is that always remember, despite the fact that I am having a wine and I am having a whiskey, and Lincoln is having a fantastic cocktail that he did not send to us, and I will hold it.
I hold it against you now, but that's cool.
I'm sorry, my boomerang program got shut down. There's something going on in the news. I gotta find out what's going on. So
crazy.
Give me 5.
It's like the post office is slower than usual. I don't know
I don't understand it.
But the point being, I just want to reiterate, as we always say, we are at home. We are over 21. We are consuming thoughtfully, and we are not driving. So please, if you are enjoying a beverage tonight along with us, please do so thoughtfully and responsibly. That is of the utmost importance. So I'm going to slowly take everybody off camera, which always makes me a little sad. But Lincoln, bless you for being here. Beth, you make every week a pleasure. And I can't wait to see what we do next week. We are continuing with Jura, and I'm really excited to see next week's pairing. And next week, we also have another old friend of mine from New York City that you might actually know, Lincoln. I'll bring that up to you once we get off.
Okay.
Anyway, have a great night, you guys. And here we go. Let's see. It always takes me a second. It's so weird to be the host and also running the board always, all the time, because it's sort of this divided consciousness sometimes. But what a pleasure to be doing our 7th episode. And the best part about this is going to be bringing us into the week before Thanksgiving. And the last pairing that we're going to do this week, or excuse me, in 2 weeks, is going to be the perfect pairing for a Thanksgiving dinner. So I'm kind of excited that it just happened that way. Much like a lot of the things that happen on the long and the short of it, it was a happy accident, but I am greatly excited. So I hope you have the most beautiful evening. I hope you stay safe and happy. It's been a challenging week, so make sure you're taking care of your mental and your emotional health. And on that note, I'm going to bounce.